World's Swiss stage is almost over, and we've finally seen enough games to spot which champions are actually good, and which ones are kind of a troll pick. Some of these picks showed up constantly, but if you look past the flashy moments, their win rates tell a different story. So today we are looking at the top 5 worst, but still commonly picked champions at the Worlds, and why teams keep picking them, why they're struggling, and in what situations they actually make sense. Let's start right from number 5. Neeko has quietly become one of the most common champions at the Worlds. Her pick ban rate is huge, but her win rate is slightly negative, which raises a big question. What's wrong with her? Neeko isn't exactly weak. She has a solid laning, decent crowd control, and that flashy ultimate that can completely turn a fight. But here's the problem. She is usually played as a support, which means she doesn't get enough gold or AP to make her ultimate truly threatening. She is also too dependent on her team's composition. Neeko's ultimate only really works if your teammates can follow up instantly, things like Orianna's ultimate or else engage. But most teams that pick her don't draft around that. They take her for early lane dominance or creative picks with her passive, and then suddenly in mid-game fights, she just doesn't hit hard enough. In reality, Neeko is much stronger as a mid laner. She can get her items, have some damage, and become a real backline threat. I hope we will see someone flex her mid at some point, because in her current support role, she's flashy, but underwhelming. Pantheon currently has 1 win and 7 losses, which says a lot. He got nerfed hard before Worlds, and even though Riot tried to buff him a bit, it didn't really fix the fundamental issue. His playstyle doesn't fit for the way pro players play. Let me explain. Pantheon is designed to snowball early through skirmishes, dives, and small fights. But pro play is slower and more structured. You don't get that chaotic early game that Pantheon thrives in. Instead, games revolve around big 5v5 teamfights, and that's exactly what he's bad at. He can't front to back, he can't peel, and his damage falls off a cliff once everyone has a couple of items. So even though he looks scary in the early 2v2s or 3v3s, he just doesn't transition well into how pro teams play. In solo queue, Pantheon can enter a game by minute 20-25. At the Worlds, by minute 25, he is already outscaled and praying to find one random pick before the fight. Now let's talk about Ryze, a classic Worlds staple with 4 wins and 11 losses this year. Every season, pros seem to believe in this champion's potential, and to be fair, there's a reason for that. Ryze gives you a lot of control over the map. He can push waves fast, move to side lanes, and use his ultimate to force plays that most other mids simply can't. The problem is, teams are picking him too early in drafts and treating him like a blind pick. That's where everything falls apart. Ryze can look amazing into short-range melee matchups like Yone or Akali, where he can push and threat with EW. But when you blind pick him, you open yourself to lots of ranged champions. Champions who outrange you, outscale you, and force you to play from behind. And even when Ryze gets to roam, pro teams are so disciplined that it's hard to actually convert those plays into leads. Everyone wants deep, supports track his movement, and by the time he arrives, the play is gone. He doesn't scale as hard as a true control mage either. So, unless your team comp is designed to play through sides, Ryze ends up being a mid laner who pushes waves but doesn't actually achieve much with it. He's still a good champion who can offer unique early game tools and scales decently. But if your team doesn't have that proactive identity, Ryze is just an expensive minion wave manager. That's why he's struggling so much right now. The top 2 is Jarvan, who currently sits at 6 wins and 9 losses. On paper, he makes sense: early pressure, solid engage, and a strong gank potential. But that's only when you pick him with a plan. What we are seeing instead is teams blind picking him early just to have engage. And that's where things start breaking down. Jarvan's entire value comes from punishing immobile carries and controlling early tempo. If your opponents draft mobile champions, things like Yunara, Ezreal or Corki, your ultimate becomes a joke. They just jump out or they bait you in and counter-engage. And since pro games don't usually have constant skirmishes, Jarvan doesn't get to build that early lead. You end up with a champion that dives in, burns everything and dies instantly. His scaling is weak, and once teams start playing front to back, Jarvan's only job becomes dying for vision. When he works, it's always in very specific drafts, usually when paired with burst damage mids or strong early game lanes that can help him snowball. Last few Worlds games are great examples of that. That's why he's actually on a win streak now. But at the start of Worlds, teams didn't draft him like that. They just wanted a generic engaged jungler, and Jarvan simply doesn't fill that role anymore. And finally, the top one, K'Sante. He's still getting picked at Worlds, and yet he continues to underperform heavily. And it's not because he's insanely weak, it's because teams are misunderstanding what kind of champion he actually is now. After his another rework, K'Sante became an early game champion. His best window to win games is between 15 to 20 minutes, when he can bully lanes and force skirmishes. But in professional play, games rarely get decided in that window. Teams play slowly, scale up, and trade evenly until major objectives. That completely neutralizes K'Sante's strengths. He is designed to win through momentum, but at Worlds, momentum barely exists before mid-game. So what happens is, he gets a small lead, can't push it, and then becomes a low damage tank that can't threaten carries or outscale enemy tops. When he does get ahead, sure, he looks unstoppable. Chat goes wild, starts spamming that riot emote, and suddenly he's solo killing people. But that's a very specific case. In most games, he's just a slightly worse version of other top lane tanks, because they either scale better or provide more reliable teamfight impact. Most of champions in this video are just slightly weak and don't get the drafts they want to. Maybe in BO3 and BO5s they will perform a bit better, because teams will pick them in better situations. Like, subscribe and drop a comment if you enjoyed the video. Bye!